Homily for the second Sunday of Ordinary Time, Year C. Changing water into wine. Our readings for this Sunday are Isaiah chapter 62 verse 1 to 5, 1 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 4 to 11, and the Gospel of St. John chapter 2 verse 1 to 11. Jesus changes water into wine at Cana in Galilee. What Jesus did is called a sign. He gave his first sign to show that the time has come. The long-awaited bridegroom is here to claim his bride, Israel. He will bring the people to himself in a very new way. The sign represents the fact that the wedding feast is on. The period of fasting is over. It is the time of abundance and generosity. At a time of great distress, when the people of Israel were experiencing their lowest moment in history, Jerusalem had been destroyed and the people were humiliated in Babylon, where they were sent on exile. At this time, the people reasoned that Israel, once recognized as God's bride, had been forgotten. She is now a widow, bereft of children. But in chapter 62 of the book of Isaiah, the prophet prophesied that God had not forgotten them, and that he will take Israel to himself like a bridegroom takes a new bride when the time comes, amid great rejoicing. Isaiah reassured them that God will change their circumstances and gladden their hearts with new wine as on a wedding feast. The image of rich wine in abundance is a familiar one for the Messianic days. It is a sign of the joyous arrival of God, a symbol of God's abundant generosity, a mark of God's favor. Instances include Isaiah chapter 25 verse 6 to 8, where we read, "On this mountain the Lord of hosts will provide for all peoples a feast of rich food and choice wine, juicy rich food and pure choice wine." And in Isaiah chapter 55 verse 1 to 3 we read, "Oh, come to the water, all you who are thirsty. Though you have no money, come. Buy and eat. Come, buy wine and drink milk without money, for free. Why spend money on what cannot nourish and your wages on what fails to satisfy? Listen carefully to me, and you will have good things to eat and rich food to enjoy." Again, in prophet Amos, chapter 9, verse 14, we read, "I will restore my people Israel. They shall rebuild and inhabit their ruined cities. They shall plant vineyards and drink the wine." And in Joel chapter 2, verse 19, he says, "I am sending you grain, new wine and oil, and you will be satisfied by them. Never again will I make you a disgrace among the nations." Thus, in the midst of widespread hopelessness and distress, these prophecies of Isaiah and other prophets, they do offer hope. Through the new marriage of God and his people, there will be a change of fortune. With the coming of the Messiah, there will be a cleansing of the land and a new start, because God will become one with his people. These prophets prophesied that this new era will be marked by a promise of a wedding feast with an abundance of choice food and wine. Though Isaiah's prophecies are both real and symbolic, Israel looked forward to the realization of this prophecy with desperation and anticipation. It is this prophecy that is fulfilled today in Christ Jesus at the very beginning of his public ministry at a wedding feast in Cana. With his presence at Cana, Jesus demonstrated that the prophecies of Isaiah are being fulfilled. Prompted by compassion, Mary, the mother of Jesus, goes to Jesus and says, "They have no wine." Jesus replied, "Woman, why turn to me? My hour has not yet come." But he goes ahead to perform his first miracle. With compassion, all things are possible. The miracles of Jesus were prompted by compassion, all of them. He did not perform any miracle to show off his power. The miracle of the loaves in John chapter 6 verse 1 to 13 was prompted by compassion. Jesus was moved because the crowd had been with him and they were hungry. So, if we all bring the little we have with compassion, Jesus is capable of multiplying it. Now, at the wedding, something awkward and terribly embarrassing happened. The hosts ran out of wine. The compassionate mother of Jesus noticed that something was wrong. She felt the embarrassment of the hosts and did something about it. She had empathy and she was sensitive to their needs. If she was busy in our modern day social media, she wouldn't have observed the lack of wine. It would have been the shame of a lifetime for this young couple. They were about to be thoroughly humiliated and would have been the subject of public ridicule. But just then, at the instance of his mother, Jesus intervened and saved the situation. He intervenes to bring joy and gladness to a couple who would otherwise have been highly embarrassed and have their wedding day ruined. He transformed their fortunes unto good, and the guests were filled with gladness. He turned their shame into honor. Jesus can also intervene in our own circumstances today. Those who have experienced God know that this is how God operates. The miracle of Cana demonstrates that in Jesus there is a new epiphany. Light has dawned on the people. God has appeared among them, and great things happen when God mixes with humanity. At the event in Cana, the God revealed to us is not a frightful, vengeful, punitive God that needs to be appeased so that we may be saved. No, a God of compassion that comes to our aid in humiliating and embarrassing and painful circumstances. God is revealed as a God of love and affection, a God who rejoices over his people as the bridegroom rejoices over his new bride, Isaiah 62:5. A God who wants to develop a personal relationship with us, a God who prepares a banquet of rich food and choice wine for his people. Now, obedience is key in receiving God's miracle. Mary, very much aware of this, tells the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." And when they obeyed Jesus' order to fill the 6 empty jars with water, a miracle happened. Thus, these servants were part of the miracle because of their faith in Jesus and their obedience. Perhaps too many of us Christians have run out of wine on account of our present circumstances. Too many people in our generation have run out of wine on account of poverty and illness and unemployment and underemployment and loneliness and rejection and disappointment and fear. But the good news of today is that from these circumstances of ours, from these humiliating and embarrassing circumstances of ours, God can bring joy and gladness. He can turn our water into choice wine if we go to him and do whatever he tells us. God bless you.